You know how to fill one of these in?
A long time ago. Let me see. Can't read it. It's printed with a little without my glasses.
You're no help.
Can we speed this up, please? You may have nothing to do. I have things to do today, okay?
No, we can't. So will you shut up?
Jaywalking. License.
Yeah? License?
Yeah,
Jaywalking?
Yeah, jaywalking.
I don't have it on me, okay? I wasn't driving, okay? I was walking. What do I need, a walking license now?
God, let's just shoot him.
What is he, crazy?
Get out of the way, Raj! I'm gonna drill him! We can make it look like suicide! Get out of the way! We can make it look like suicide!
The video cameras!
I don't care! I'm still gonna drill him! Get out of the way!
Get out of here before my partner kills you!
No, that way! Not that way! This way! This way! Over there! Go right now! Run! Yeah!
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 206 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm Becca and as always joined by my fellow co-hosts Chris and Dave. How are you both?
Good evening and welcome to Podcasting with Do You Expect Us to Talk?
It is a little bit like that.
Well, no, I thought I'd go lighter because the film's lighter.
I'm definitely getting too old for this crap.
Yeah. This is the more family friendly. You're getting too old for this poop.
Getting too old for this mess.
For these people,
So,
this fecal matter.
This film gives me a question: Is eating doggy biscuits more healthier than smoking cigarettes?
Depends what's in them, I would say.
Well,
I don't know.
I think the problem is I haven't seen many dogs smoking as a controlled experiment.
I think that's true. Yeah, I don't see many dogs smoking, do you? So
Yeah.
it must work. Obviously, we neither condone, eating dog biscuits or smoking.
And also, if a dog, how could you do the experiment? Because if a dog smoked 20 a day, in dog years, it's smoking 20 a week.
You'd be
So that's not quite as dangerous. So who knows?
wheezing like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah. Or is that 7? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, that's confusing, isn't it?
Doggy biscuits. I don't know. This film is trying a bit too hard, isn't it? Yeah. So, Becca, before we go any further, what are we covering tonight?
So yes, tonight it's all about Lethal Weapon 3, starring Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, Joe Pesci, Rene Russo, Danny Love, Tracy Wolfe, Stuart Wilson, who's English, I didn't realise, and Steve Kern, with original music by Michael Cohen, Eric Clapton and Dave Sanborn, script by Jeffrey Boehm and Robert Mark Harmon, I don't know if they're related, directed by Richard Donner and released in 1992. Sorry, I'm a bit quick this evening, apologies.
I'm looking up Cayman.
I'm trying to whip through it.
Does not appear to be any relation to Michael.
Yeah, I don't know if they're related. I was like,
No, doesn't appear to be.
Right, okay.
Stuart Wilson, I'm thinking, do I recognise you, do I not? Went to look him up, he was the doctor in Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
He's-
I saw him, obviously because I'd never seen this one before. Then he appeared on screen and I was like, where do I see that face before? Hot Fuzz.
He is one of those actors who, he'll show up and you wouldn't recognise him.
Well, he looks nothing like it in Hot Fuzz. I know it's like 15 years later, but even so.
He's in.
It is completely different.
He plays one of the. He's also the baddie in The Mask of Zorro as well.
Yeah.
I've not
But
seen
he
it
also-
forever.
But he's also he played one of the generals in The Rock
Right.
as an cameo, and I swear to God, if you saw him
I
in
can't
that,
place him in any of those things.
Yeah, but if I pulled up a screen, I might try and find it. But if I pulled up a picture,
Well, I'm going to look up
you'd be
Stuart Wilson.
He's
actor.
one of those character actors. He spots
You'll
up
be like,
anything.
I
I'm
would
going to
not
do
have
an
guessed
image
it was him.
search on him now and just see if I... No, he just looks different in everything. I'm looking at him in The Age of Innocence here, and I'm looking at him in... No, it hasn't got the name of the film there. Romance on the Orient Express, which is only 8 years before this, and he does not look even similar. And then if you go and see him in Hot Fuzz, he looks like a family
different
doctor.
again.
Totally different.
He's also a very versatile actor, and you can blend in with any role.
Yeah. So he's just one of those. I mean, obviously he's never going to be like a movie star kind of name,
No.
but it just shows what decent actor actually is. he just
Yeah,
like
he's got
disappears into a
work
role.
history.
So he didn't play the volleyball in Castaway then?
No.
Not that Wilson. Okay. Oh my
Even
God,
despite
he
his
really-
name, no, he didn't.
He really dissolves into a role. There are very few of those. We were talking only last week about how good and how versatile Joe Pesci is. But it's always Joe Pesci, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, even with blonde hair, it's still Joe Pesci.
Yeah. Other point to make about this film, cinematographer Jan De Bont.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, fun
So
fact.
first change in cinematographer, it was the same guy for the first two films. It's going to be a different guy again next week. Jan De
Well,
Bont
it does
is,
look good this year.
Yeah,
This week it does
he's
look good. I mean, not the
probably-
other films don't, but
he's going to be best known when he passes probably as a director for Speed 2 Cruise Control, and
gosh.
the second Tomb Raider film, Cradle of Life. But
I forgot you made that as well. Oh my god.
as Chris will
And that haunted house movie, what was it?
House on Haunted
Memories?
Hill.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Nor did I. I'm going to call him up a minute. Actually, have a look at his directing.
Phone him up. Hello, Jan.
The
How are you?
Haunting. Sorry, that was the one with Catherine Zeta-Jones in it, I think. But
Yeah, Liam
Was one
Neeson.
with Eddie Murphy? No, that was a different one.
no, that was the Haunted
I know, I'm
Mansion.
joking.
That was a Disney sort of ride spin-off, and they never work. Count Pirates of the Caribbean aside, I suppose. He directed Twister as well, which I always get confused with Dante's Peak. I keep thinking Brosnan's in it. He's not. But he's also known as a cinematographer. In fact, the majority of his career has been as a cinematographer. Started in his native country on sort of quite adult films and working with Paul Verhoeven. But I suppose let's cut straight to the chase. He was the cinematographer on Die Hard.
Quite a few. Die Hard, Black Rain,
Hunt for Red
Hunt for
October,
October,
Basic Instinct.
Flatliners. Yep.
So
Quite a few, like, classic 80s.
I wouldn't know where to look. I'm sorry, if I was the cinematographer on Basic Instinct, I wouldn't know where to look.
And Cujo as well, also.
Yeah, Cujo is the Stephen King adaptation. The film didn't come that long after the Stephen King book. The thing I remember it for is a fairly graphic sex scene in it with Dee Wallace, who's the mother in E.T. But yes, I have seen that.
And he did a film called Raw. Well, if anyone doesn't know about this film, this is a film that where they used actual live tigers in with the actors, and and as you can imagine, there was quite.
Well, his first film apparently had real
injuries and
sex
that.
and like erections in it and stuff. So he does. Obviously, he works with people who believe in keeping it real.
Yeah.
In terms of American films, he also did All the Right Moves, which was an early Tom Cruise effort. I think that's got Leah Thompson in it as well. Ruthless People, which had Danny DeVito in. So yeah, I think is probably his biggest talent as a cinematographer, but he's had just enough hits as a director as well, although he's only directed about 4 or 5 things. But apart from that, it's largely the same people. I mean, Jeffrey Bohm's screenplay again, I think that'll change next week. Largely the same cast with a couple of additions, same music, same everything. So again, continuity, very similar length of film at a shade under 2 hours. Similar price to last week, about $5 million more, so adjusted probably very similar. And this is the biggest hit in the series. It took about 100 million more than Lethal Weapon 2.
Do you think that's probably down to the reduced rating? Because obviously this was, in our terms, it was a 15, wasn't it? I'm not sure about the States.
That suggests it would be a PG-13 to me, but like we said last week, they don't always line up. But let's just make the assumption for a minute, and we're happy to be corrected. Sometimes we say these things and we say, don't worry about correcting us because it doesn't matter. But if there's any Americans listening who can remember or look it up for us, we're happy to be corrected on this. But let's assume it was for a minute PG-13, and I see no reason why it wouldn't be. I suppose it sounds obvious now that PG-13 is a bit of a sweet spot for these films. Like, think back to Batman Begins, Casino Royale. You can put a fair amount of violence and even hint at sort of blood and stuff without sacrificing a rating and get bigger audiences in. But as obvious as it sounds to us, some fairly big films in the 80s and early 90s did come out R-rated. And the only thing that occurs to me is studios must have learnt the lesson somewhere. Do you know what I mean? That when you do the Taken franchise, you do all the sequels at the lower rating, even though it's probably not that well suited to it. I mean, Taken's another story in itself, because the reduced cut harms the editing of the film really badly. I mean, at one point someone dies just sitting down. It's only when you watch the full version
to think
you
of
realise it's weird.
the newish Die Hard films where they're just like, you've got CGI blood splatters. stuff like that.
Yeah, what was I would have thought Die Hard with a Vengeance must have been R-rated. I mean, I cannot imagine you can have someone naked in a park with "I hate the N-word" on a card and have that PG-13.
Yeah,
I think
there was a 15 over here. But,
I think Live Free and Die Hard Onwards, which was Die Hard 4.0 over here, but we won't acknowledge that when we do Die Hard. Live Free or Die Hard, I think Onwards was the sort of PG-13, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think it was a 12. Definitely, definitely 12.
Yeah. So they've learnt the lesson from somewhere. I don't know. I don't know if it's because they've literally learnt that's the better way to do it, or that historically, less so now with ongoing franchises like Marvel, but historically sequels never did quite as well. If one of them did, it tended to be the second one. So perhaps it's almost to offset falling box office. As you go along, you just soften it and make it friendlier. I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I could also depend on the release, like come at the right time where it hasn't really got any major competitors. Because when this come out, this was summer.
And I'm trying to remember what came out in '92 without looking it up, because the whole point about how strong a year is, how much do you remember without looking it up? 1989, we could sit here for ages, and then we start running out, and suddenly you'll name another one, and it's like there's loads of them. 92, let me think. Batman Returns.
That was the biggest one of the year.
Batman, yeah, and actually, Batman Forever was a response to it because the box office dropped quite a lot from the first one. I think that took 200 and something, whereas the first one took 400 and something. I think something like 270 without looking. Also in '92 would have been Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I have to say I'm starting to struggle.
I've got a fun fact about that coming up at the end of the show.
What, Bram Stoker's Dracula?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. What else came out this year? There were no Bond films. Bond wasn't existing. There were no superhero films.
I mean, it would have been if they stayed on track. So
I'm taking that 6-year break. Oh my god.
Patriot Games. Unforgiven.
Oh yeah, really.
Basic Instinct. We talked about.
I thought
that was a lot later.
Sneakers, which is quite The Bodyguard. That's probably
The Bodyguard would be the big one probably, because Patriot Games, even though Jack Ryan had been on film, this was almost like a
I always thought that was like late 90s. I don't know why. Sorry.
And I think Patriot Games might have had a higher rating as well, because I mean you had Glengarry Glen Ross, Reservoir Dogs, etc. But
yeah, they were like sort of 18 or like NC-17.
A Few Good Men.
Alien Free. Yeah, A Few Good Men, which Reservoir Dogs, of course.
There's some quality films this year, but there's a lot of them are
not
like
a really
massive.
great decade for movies.
Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Candyman. Last Mohicans.
Yeah.
My Cousin Vinny, which we talked about last week.
Okay, another film I mistakenly put in the previous year. Army of Darkness. Yeah, Stop or My Mum Will Shoot.
Oh yeah.
Which is on Netflix now if you're in the UK, and do watch it. It's terrible.
It is really bad.
I think I remember seeing that back in the 90s and never again.
Well, I don't know what they were thinking when, like, Sylvester Stallone probably said something along the lines of, "Look, I'm getting a bit older now. I need to diversify.
Let's do this film.
What sort of audience should I go for?" And they said, "How about the Golden Girls demographic?"
Yeah.
I mean, the sad thing is though, like I remember like sort of being in the cinema, walking out and seeing like the poster of it and thinking, "Oh, I might want to see that." This is me as like as a 10-year-old kid or something. So.
Some of these films are really of their time. Singles came out this year, which is kind of the Seattle grunge scene with Matt Dillon. Yeah, so it's not a marquee year, even though there's a lot of sort of reasonably memorable films that year. We're not talking like absolute super blockbusters. Not really. El Mariachi was this year, but that was a film made for $7,000. So yeah, Romper Stomper, film that first brought Russell Crowe to any kind of prominence. Although LA Confidential made him a star. There were a lot of sort of films that kind of... I mean, Universal Soldier was this year. And everyone was like, that's this year's Terminator 2. And of course, it really wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
Under Siege, which I've never liked. Unforgiven's a great film, but again, in terms of box office smashes, a Western starring a 60-odd-year-old. It was more of a critical darling than anything else. Although it had a hell of a cast. Not strangely, we're not covering it in all the Westerns. But there you go. First memories of this film. I've seen it once.
We're not doing all the Westerns then, are we?
Well, yeah, no, but that's just a running joke. We're doing the only Westerns. It's 5 films.
We're doing a select
Well, we were going to
Western.
do 4, but then I realised The Fistful of Dynamite, which I've never seen, which is also known as Duck You Sucker, if anyone wants to look it up. That's the last one, so we'll do the 5 ones. We were thinking of doing Once Upon a Time in America, but it's just it is like too long.
We'd need like 3 episodes for that.
Talking of which, I was asked today if I wanted to review Zack Snyder's Justice League, and someone said to me, "Can you get the review in for Friday?" And it's out on like Thursday, and it's 4 hours long. It's like
Just go, no, too long.
2. So I started watching the ultimate cut of Batman v Superman tonight, just because I've got to put myself back in the mindset of what they were going for with a follow-up to it.
I saw that was on Sky TV like over the weekend, and I thought, oh god.
It's not great, although because I'm braced for what it is. Like the first hour I've watched, and it's like, okay, I'm all right watching it, but it does mean when we cover DC, we've got like 2 versions of Justice League to cover, and I imagine them to be rather different from each other. But we'll see. As for this film, I saw it literally in my living room on an old cathode ray TV when it was a year or 2 old. And I'm thinking I must have got the video because network television premieres were not within a year or 2 back then. And I definitely sort of saw it before I sort of left home and went to university and so on. So I think I probably saw this 94 sometime. Maybe early 95. No, it would have been 94 given where I saw it. On video. And I just remember thinking it was a bit nothing. I do remember thinking, because the first time I saw Rennie Russo, I remember thinking what a beautiful woman she was and how good she was in it. And really the only other real star vehicle she had after this was probably the Thomas Crown Affair. Which, when you think she's got to go up against sort of Faye Dunaway's original, she did a really good job in that. And Brosnan did as well. Not the biggest Brosnan fan as Bond, but Brosnan did a great job in the Thomas Crown Affair remake. He was well suited to that role. He's very suited to the sort of weary version of the matinee idol. I think if he'd lent into that more as Bond, almost more of a Brosnan, it actually would have suited him better, even though we think of him as light and quippy. But so I just remember I think I saw this before Lethal Weapon 2, and the reason being he puts his shoulder back in at one point, and I didn't get that it was a reference to something we found out he could do in the second one.
Yeah. I
might have said the opposite of that this week, but bear in mind, listeners, you remember things as you go sometimes. You think you saw it in like a year. I might have thought I saw Lethal Weapon 2 like a year or 2 after it was made. And then you watch this one and go, there were things in this that I didn't get that were a callback. So my history with it is incredibly short. Tonight is only the second time I've seen it. I was aware it was a bit lighter. And the other thing that makes me realise I saw Lethal Weapon 2 second of these two is that I was expecting Lethal Weapon 2 to be very similar in terms of annoying Joe Pesci presence. And even though his screen time probably isn't that much different, he's even more annoying tonight. When you go back and watch Lethal Weapon 2 second of these two, he actually seems relatively restrained, even though he's not. So that's my history. I'll get to my first thoughts in a minute. What about you guys?
Becca, was this your first viewing?
Sorry. Yes, it was. Yeah, I've never seen this film before. Although I've got like a vague memory of where I live. There used to be like a really old rundown video shop, video rentals. Remember them? It wasn't Blockbuster. It was like an indie one. And for some reason, like they always used to play the trailer for this film. And there's like posters up everywhere. I think the owner must have been like a real fan. But seeing like that poster of where you got Riggs and Murtaugh and then you got Joe Pesci trying to squeeze in the middle. That seemed to stick on my mind for some reason. And I was thinking, where have I seen that before? Oh, yes. Yeah, first viewing of this film. I'd never seen it before. Maybe seen the trailer 100 million times due to going to that video shop, and also seen the poster quite a lot. But yeah, apart from that, I'd never seen it before. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing... Well, obviously I think I remember seeing it advertised like around cinemas and that. I even remember seeing like the trailer while I was watching illegally watching Batman Returns.
Naughty, naughty.
That was when 10-year-old Chris went to watch a 12, and we're not even sure if he turned
Naughty,
10 by
naughty.
this point.
But yeah, before it was a 12A.
Naughty
Yeah,
boy.
this was when it was that he was breaking the law.
Did you dress up as? Did you get on a mate's shoulders and actually go in as with your
He
overcoat
wore
and
a false
dark
moustache.
and a hat and dark glasses?
He wore a tie and a
Yeah.
false moustache, and came in with like a scotch and soda in his hands.
Excuse me, sir. What's your name?
Would you please give me a seat for your most excellent Lethal Weapon 3, my good man? Yes, I am 43.
I would like to see Batman Returns. Thank you.
What did I say?
Thank you.
I was Lethal Weapon 2. Yeah,
Confirms
yeah.
my adultivity.
Yes, I hear it has adult themes likely to upset young folks, but as you can see, I'm a grown man. I work in a bank, you know. And hopefully in a few years' time, I'll be able to watch Unbreakable in Cheltenham.
Yeah.
So-
Do excuse me, I'm a bit short for my age. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, he missed
Keep going
the,
on
he missed the,
stilts.
he missed the trailer to Lethal Weapon 3 because he was too busy reading Wordsworth to try to fit in.
So yeah, that was my memory. And then and of course, like it came on like ITV on Saturday night sometime.
Yeah. He
So
was so
that's
shocked
when I
when he
first watched it.
dislocated his shoulder that he dropped his ice cream all down his cravat. So yeah. So you saw it on TV, basically, yeah?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Was this a particularly cut version on TV? Do you know?
The problem is, and this is kind of probably like what will be like or everyone's opinion on this, but I kind of can't remember. My memory of this one has always been the most vaguest. I can kind of like remember like
All I remember
what it's like. But
I think I said this last week. I said what I got wrong, and the reason I got it wrong is because it was all I could remember. Well, that's not fair. One of the few things I could remember was him putting his shoulder back. But because it loomed large in my memory, I thought it was a running joke through the whole film. It wasn't. He does it once. And I said it was outside, maybe on a building site. And if you look at where it happens, it is kind of that. The only other thing I remember is Rennie Russo getting into a fight with all those guys. And as they're about to sort of steam in, Riggs just says, "No, watch this." And that's all I remembered of this film. Apart from Joe Pesci severely irritating me. And I remember them running away from the explosion, but I don't remember, at the start of the film I mean, but I don't remember if I remembered it from the film or whether I remember it from like an advert at the start of like videotapes for DVD. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, that's true actually. It's starting to come in around this time.
well, I never understood that. You go and rent a video, and at the start of the video, there'd be an advert going, "Look how good this picture and sound quality is for DVD," and you're watching it on a video. It's
Yeah,
like,
you
well,
have that kind of split
that-
screen thing,
it's
don't you?
not-
There's like
it's-
VHS, it's all crappy and grey,
It's
and
not,
then DVD,
it's
all
not
new and
selling
shiny.
it to me. That is inherently VHS standard because I'm watching a VHS. But there you go. The first thoughts on it for me tonight is I struggled with it, I have to say. It had a lot of the things that I thought would be wrong on paper with the first one if you described it to me, and that it's tonally a bit all over the place. It's a knockabout comedy with a really dark bit after he shoots that kid. We've gone from Riggs' methods being unorthodox and a bit driven by not insanity but certainly instability, but they kind of get to the right result by the wrong route, if you like, to him going in and just cutting into a bomb when the bomb squad are coming along. And I know the film puts them back in patrol, but frankly they should be like fired and sued. So I thought that the playing up the comedy craziness of the Riggs character was not really working this time. even when you look at the poster, it screams this is a comedy. If you put different actors in the same uniforms with the same haircuts, you think it was a Loaded Weapon or something. You think it was like, oh look, it's a parody of Lethal Weapon. And yeah, they had Joe Pesci in that annoying character role in the original. And I just found the plot a little bit unengaging. I think Mel Gibson is not an old man at this point, but I mean, he's still clearly in shape, because at one point he pretty much strips down and you can see there's no fat
They get
on
naked.
him. But he's sort of looking too old for the mullet now. I know the mullet's not
He has
the
a
best.
haircut next time.
Well, I know a mullet's not necessarily the best aging haircut of all time, but he suddenly looks like an old version of like Riggs in the first one. And I just think, like, I don't know what this film is offering me. Pesci is irritating. It is just their next case again. He's no longer a lethal weapon. He's more of a sort of comfy weapon.
Less crazy weapon.
And Rene Russo's great, but much like most of Rene Russo's career, she's been sort of a beauty with screen presence, a little bit wasted in most of the stuff she's done as a supporting character. We were saying off air before we came on that she's one of those sort of 3 or 4 actresses I can think of that should have been a much bigger star. Another one being Linda Fiorentino. I think I mentioned Greta Scacchi. And there's a few others like that over the years where you just think, why weren't you just massive? And they weren't. Maybe it's because she came along a little bit later, because she's about 38 here, which is far from old, but we know what Hollywood's like, and we were talking off air that she was denied the Batman Forever role a year or 2 later, or 3 years later, because Val Kilmer was brought to the role and she was older than Val Kilmer, and Hollywood in that era would not wear it, even though the age difference was something like 6 years, which is just far from outrageous. So I was really disappointed by it. I was rather bored, and the point occurred. I didn't think it was terrible. I still enjoyed some of the sort of byplay between them. But it felt like they were just dreaming up silly things for them to do. So you had the toilet bomb in the first one, and then you've got this ridiculous bomb sequence in this that ain't that funny. And you've got
It kind of starts and ends with a bomb, doesn't it?
I know, and then you've got him almost like, I know he's a bit wired, a bit different, but you've got him almost getting like turned on when Rene Russo's kicking those guys up. And I'm thinking, God, their bedroom behaviour must be really fucking odd. You know, it's just
He should have got a bomb, he's not interested.
beats up the fucking waitress to turn him on or something, you know. And the thought occurred, and this is probably the most disrespectful thing I could say of Richard Donner at this point, because I think Richard Donner's had a very good career in many, many ways, and what Richard Donner is particularly good at is who he chooses to collaborate with. You know, I may not be the biggest fan of his Bond work, but his choice of Mankiewicz to rescue that Superman project was perfect. You know, he always works with good people who turn out decent scripts and good solid professionals. And you know, Jan De Bont, it's only a few years after he's done the iconic sort of action film of that era. So, and it's only a year or 2 before he directed Speed, which was really, really popular and very good. But the thought occurred a couple of times is Richard Donner not very good at action? And the reason I said that was the final quarter to third of the first film was the bit that lost me a bit. I was bored during all the action last week, although I thought the action was a bit better than the first film. And every time they weren't just stood round chatting, I was a bit bored this week. And then I think back to Superman, and I'm thinking, well, partly that was the rush they were in and having to make one self-contained rather than run into 2, but the last third of that's the weakest. I mean, Superman's a wonderful film, but only about 2/3 to 3/4 of it. And so I'm not going to slaughter it. It's not one of the awful films we've ever covered, but it's a bigger than expected step down from the first 2. I thought it was going to have a lighter tone, but it plays more like a parody in places for me, and that's just me. What about you guys?
Becca?
Yeah. No, I think for me, I enjoyed the first 2 films. I can see the first one, is really iconic. And the second film as well, I can see why, it's hugely, hugely popular. For me, I did sort of, almost kind of, if I'm going to rank them, I would probably pay, not that the first one is terrible, because it's not, but I would have probably enjoyed the second one more, just for the, for the action kind of content as well. But here as well, I did struggle with it a little bit. I kind of feel it's quite busy because you've got the introduction of Lorna, who's a brilliant kick-ass character. Quite a busy plot. I kind of didn't really get a feel for like the sort of main villains. I mean, good performances, but I just feel like they're just generic villains, generic nasties really. But I didn't really sort of get a feel for them beyond that. So I kind of felt, obviously you just like them because they're the villains, but you didn't get a real chance to kind of know very much about them apart from them being corrupt cops and running drugs on the side. I mean, there's a subplot involving excuse me, involving what's the name? Murder's son, I can't remember. He's kind of involved in gang culture and things like that, and there's that kind of subplot which is never fully explored. And obviously you've got Joe Pesci. I mean, he's always a joy, but I agree with you, Dave, as well. He tends to play the same sort of characters, and here he did grate on me a little bit, unfortunately. But he's known for playing these sort of characters, and he can sort of play on it and turn it on its head, and continue to turn up in these really iconic roles. But for me, it just seemed too busy. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of plot holes as well, and a lot of kind of threads that were kind of left up, and I don't know, disconnected. There was quite a lot of disconnect for me in this film. But I love the script. It's a funnier script. As I say, it's a lot lighter. Sorry, I struggle with names. Mel Gibson has a lot, he's got more funnier lines, and there's a lot of wordplay as well. Like, it's back and forth between him and Rene Russo. I think it's really, really clever, and it just shows how, shows their attraction to each other, and it shows like how, how kind of alike they are. And that scene where they're showing each other their scars, I think that's really cleverly done, really well choreographed. This action scene is definitely more explosive. There's more massive set pieces here than you can shake a stick at. Action is definitely, it gets higher and higher in stakes with each film. And yeah, that was incredible. But yeah, apart from that, it just kind of left me a bit flat, really. So sorry. I think for me, it's kind of not. I don't really rate this one as high as the other two. But certainly in terms of the script, it's funnier.
I think
and the action scenes are better. So.
What I would say on Joe Pesci, just from my point of view, because I didn't really address it, is the difference is I don't like Jim Carrey very much. But the one thing I did say when we did Batman Forever was he's doing what he's been hired to do. And
yeah,
Joe Pesci here has been doing what he's been hired to do.
Yeah,
and he's doing it
he
well.
He plays a role. He does that job.
Just the joke seemed to be last week that he was a bit of a wisecracker, but he was irritating the shit out of them. Whereas this week, the film almost on a meta level thinks he's entertaining us, and I'm not finding him entertaining. I'm finding him deeply fucking annoying.
I kind of feel he's a bit extraneous here. Like we don't really need him.
Because,
he's
crammed in terribly, isn't he?
Yeah, he really is. I kind of feel like it's to the film's detriment a little bit. I mean, we don't kind of need the comic relief because you've already got Riggs' zingy lines and the camaraderie with Lorna, and everything else that's going on. So I kind of feel like it's good to see him again. He's always good value for money. But here I feel he is shoehorned in and doesn't, and just really, for me, I just found it a bit much. Really, sorry.
It's pretty much an extended cameo, though. Really.
Well, it is. Yeah, I know he's not on screen for very long, but still.
I mean, but that's the thing. It's like a lot of time he doesn't really need to be there. You could have just had him as in a few scenes, you help them sell the house or whatever, and just in those kind of things. Maybe the occasional I know that guy. Oh, he works in. He owns that property and so, which leads into
maybe he bothers them when they're off duty. They pop into a cafe, a diner or something, and he's just there. And in trying to get rid of him, he just drops that he happens to know something they're looking for.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. I'm not suggesting that would be wildly more entertaining, but that's kind of how you shoehorn him in. Whereas here, it's kind of random when he turns up.
I mean, the thing about this film, which really shone out to me was, it's very much a product of committee, as I think you should say, or maybe not committee, but just too many ideas. Richard Donner has his ideas. The first scriptwriter, what's his name, Jeffrey Bonham.
Jeffrey Bonham, yeah.
But he wrote a script. They didn't like, they wanted to change that. Richard didn't have Pesci in, so they actually wrote in scenes with Pesci in. It's like, oh no, I wanted more humour. Didn't like. I mean, originally Rene Russo's character was going to be a guy. It's going to be almost like a a rival, so to speak, not like in a, not like in a villainous way type thing, but like has like, oh, like there's a kind of like new guy on the block kind of thing, who's kind of just as capable as he is. But then they decided to make it female, like a love interest type thing. It's just so many like different like ideas bouncing around. Originally, it was going to be Mel Gibson having a affair with Murtaugh's daughter, which
Right.
that would have turned out differently. But he used to tell us just it's just crammed with stuff, and it's just crammed with like set pieces, and you think, did you need that? It just seemed to be a bit too. We've got to have this. We've got to have that set piece. Got to have that character in, and I think, and as we'll get to the last film next week, it kind of feels like they made the film as an excuse to kind of like get together and have a bit of fun, because there is very much like the team's all here. We know we're like.
Well, that was literally the tagline. I mean, the first
Yeah.
one was Danny Glover carries a lethal weapon. Mel Gibson is one. By film 4, it's the gang's all here.
Yeah.
Going to entertain you.
I mean, and spoilers for next week. It literally ends with a big family photo. So I think that's kind of the problem.
Put it this way, to give you a hint, Vin Diesel probably saw it at the time and thought, that's the fucking stuff.
Thought that's a good idea.
When he saw
Wasn't
that
it?
last
Wasn't
scene
it?
of the
It just
film,
kind
he
of
went,
ended up being
that's how
different.
you do a series, he thought.
In fairness, Vin Diesel did it better.
He did. We can laugh at their themes of family, but they do actually make them land.
Yeah.
But
So-
there you go.
So it just feels like they've more. That seems to be the main focus, and it just seems to be so detached from its origins now that it's just like
Because
another
Mel
generic
looks- well, I mean, Mel
early
looks-
90s action flick.
I mean, Mel looks recognisably the same generation as he was in the first one. It's only been like 5 years, sorry. But somehow he looks just old enough and just cosy enough as a character now. And the sort of, I'm too old for this shit. I don't know if Murtaugh even says that in this film, but the whole demeanour of the, 6 days from retirement, 10 days from retirement, 3 days from retirement kind of thing. It made me think on this viewing, which it couldn't have done at the time for reasons that will become obvious, of the recent Coming to America sequel. In that Coming to America, in turn, reminded me of Ocean's 12. In all of those 3 films, they feel like they're following up success. They don't really have any ideas, so let's vaguely do a little bit of greatest hits and just look like we got together because we enjoy each other's company. Of the 3 of them, Ocean's 12 at least tries to do something semi-different, and it looks different because it's in a very different location, because it's European as opposed to Vegas in that one. But certainly with Coming to America, it is like a very, very poor rehash of the first film, with all of the sort of character development and stuff overwritten and just undone. And it comes off as a bit of an insult that it's just an opportunity to have a load of cameos and some songs and stuff like that. This isn't quite that bad, but it almost feels like they've decided to bring it back like 10 years later, not 3 years later.
Yeah, it kind of like you couldn't decide like what it's focused. I mean, the striking thing I kept thinking throughout it, but this is Coming to America, is, well, surely, its focus should be on his son, which is kind of weird because I was half expecting it to turn out to be not his son, but there you go.
Well, the film never actually gives us any evidence it is.
Yeah, no, but
Because the mum's even like, well, I suppose it could be
I kept
his.
expecting that to be the twist.
Yeah.
But also, but if it's about him who lives in America coming over to Zamunda.
Yeah.
Surely the title to the sequel should be Coming from America.
Yes. There's not much America in it. They pop to America to have a reprise of The Barbershop, where they look all about the same age, even though, I mean, it's old age makeup on what are now older men themselves, but they look pretty much the same. The Clint Smith character looks a bit older because he was wearing less makeup in the first place. That boy's good, that one. But they haven't.
I also think they missed a chance of just having Cuba Gooding Jr. just sat in the chair not saying anything.
Yeah, I know.
Just smiling.
I did think of that. I did look just to see if it was going to be.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think of the first film, it was like Rocky Marciano.
Yeah.
What's he called? Joe Louis is 137 years old. It's the same conversations, except they're talking about Floyd Mayweather instead.
Yeah.
And it's just a very lazy film. And very early on the film, you've got like Morgan Freeman and On Vogue, and I'm thinking this is just a celebrity fucking loving. There's no film here. And Eddie Murphy, as the character of Akeem, has unlearned everything from the first film. And he's got a wife there who's living in what is now an incredibly, and I hate using this term, patriarchal society, when the first lesson he learned in the film was not to live that way. You've still got rose bearers, you've still got group bathing, and it's all the things that like the first film taught him wasn't for him, and it's really bad. But the worst thing is, we can't say, but at least it was really funny. When he kept referring to his son as the bastard, my bastard son, whoever, that was funny the first couple of times. Then it got tiring because there's a formality to sort of Zamundan speech patterns, which makes it funny. It isn't the term bastard that's funny, it's the term being used in a formal sentence structure like that. But frankly, Coming to America is roughly on a par with Blues Brothers 2000.
Oh, ouch.
Roughly.
And that's about the date rape.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Oh yeah, and the other thing is you get a de-aged Eddie Murphy because they have to show us what didn't happen obviously in the 1988 film, but they've got to retcon it to get this film out of it, which cheapens the first film a little bit. I get annoyed when sequels make the original worse. That's why I didn't like Rise of Skywalker, because it just retroactively fucked up Star Wars for me. You could argue that about The Last Jedi, but at least it tried to do something different. I admired The Last Jedi's bravery. But the thing with Coming to America is it makes Coming to America makes Coming to America worse. And there's a de-aging...
You get confused just by talking about the two different films.
Yeah, basically, if you emphasise the two, you mean the sequel.
Yeah.
But it's got like a re-engineered scene from the first film. They literally show you scenes from the first film like we're fucking idiots. But then they insert this new scene with him, and it's a de-aged Eddie Murphy. It's clearly not his body because Eddie Murphy's gained a little weight. He's not fat, but he's older. And he's got this de-aged face, and it looks like someone else's face has melted onto his. It looks terrible. It reminded me... It's like Patrick Stewart in the X-Men Origins film at the end, that de-aged effect. It looks... Or was it X-Men 3? X-Men 3.
Yeah, it's one of the X-Men movies, wasn't it?
I think it was both of them, actually. But certainly at the start of X-Men 3, where it sort of looks all right, providing no one moves, and it was the same. It looked, at the first glance, I thought this is all right, and as soon as it moved, it was almost like I could see the pixels. It was awful.
Yeah, that's one of those films that doesn't really hold up in HD.
Yeah. No, Lethal Weapon is nowhere near. Lethal Weapon 3 is nowhere near that bad. It was still relatively enjoyable in itself, but it feels like it's spinning its wheels, and whilst it doesn't directly hurt the first film, I still feel like I wish we'd been left with Riggs just a little edgier. He's just a bit too cosy here. And in order to sort of ramp up that sense that he's still a bit threatening, they have to have him do really fucking silly things like the bomb stunt at the start. There's not a competent cop in the world that would do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He's not like... Well, he's not suicidal like in the first film. I mean, yeah, he's always been a bit reckless, but not in a stupid way, like the jumper in the first film.
Yeah. Well, you said bring him down. I brought him down. Well, technically, you're right. There's a logic to what you've just done, but it's just a hair-raising way to do it.
Yeah, it's a bit spectacular, but then again, it's not like I'm going to actively sort of risk destroying a building for the sake of it, you know. So. I mean, yeah, for me, as I said, it's just a film made out of me. I mean, I didn't, you know, it was kind of one of the films where like, oh, this film's, I was like a bit worried that the first third of the film was kind of boring me, and then I kind of got into it better than I thought it would.
Yeah.
So there was stuff in it.
I didn't have any problem with it till it went all actiony at the end, and it just seems of its era, like, you know, gun muzzles flashing all the time and the mind behind things and firing at each other. Well, I suppose that's an action film. But
Yeah.
when an action film really takes me, I forget all of that. I don't sit there going, yeah, just typical action film. Whereas I did with this.
I mean, the bad guys aren't really memorable, even though Stuart Wilson actually does a good job. But
He does a good job, but I'd forgotten him before I watched it again.
I mean, it doesn't,
Yeah,
it doesn't
they
help.
weren't all that memorable, were they? I don't think.
It doesn't help that he just looks like a car salesman. But then
He was a bank manager last week. We've moved out of banking and into sales.
And but he kind of plays it in a kind of that kind of typical villain way. He's almost like he would be a likable character if he weren't doing like the killings and things like that. You know what I mean? If he weren't just like being like a flat out bastard.
Yeah. If you don't talk to him about work, you can go around his house for a barbecue.
Yeah, he's like kind of very affable, very smooth talking, and kind of like a bit sarcastic, a bit sort of like a little bit. I think what he's like. He's basically Scorpio in that episode of The Simpsons.
Hank Scorpio, you only move twice or something.
Yeah, he is a little bit.
Yeah, he was a really nice guy apart from all the sort of world domination bollocks.
Apart from the megalomania.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit like that. But
Apart from having the hollowed out volcano layer in which you hide a rocket in Italy or France.
Again, you look at his like henchmen, and they're just like regular sort of guys. You know what I mean? They don't look like your typical like heavies who look like you look memorable, or just like
I think that
it's one of those things, though, isn't it? It's maybe because they look more normal. I mean, because he looks like a car salesman, because they kind of look like a guy that you would see on the street, for example. Like, maybe that does make them a bit more scary because then they're not like, they don't look like your stereotypical villains. Maybe that does make them more scary. But I agree with you, Chris. They're kind of like, they're not very memorable. And they're not that scary.
You kind of have to like think, Bond got it right. It's henchmen, regardless of whether they were big, tough, small, weedy, or whatever. They looked interesting. And then memorable, they stand out.
Yes.
I think that's what you need. You want someone who looks a bit. Oh, he's a bit weird.
I think it's the unconscious.
Or look really sort of.
I mean, you watch like an Under Siege or something like that, and that is an unconsciously Die Hard. That's let's copy Die Hard. I mean, cliffhanger. I know we have different views on that film, but that's Die Hard on a mountain, and there was a raft of them, and you still get things that are kind of influenced by it even today. But if there's one unconscious thing I think that came out of Die Hard, it was the everyman. Now, that might be on the action hero side, in that sort of Schwarzenegger and all his muscles and that started to go out of vogue, and the sort of balding guy with a bit of a paunch became a little bit more of a thing. But I think I think
it started when like the actors, just action stars.
Yeah, I think it just became proper actors. Yeah, I mean, Bruce Willis made his name in a sitcom, not as like a TV heavy or hard man or anything like that. But if you look at Die Hard, the guy with the long blonde hair that killed himself, he looks like a henchman, but Alan Rickman just looks like he could be a businessman. And I just think that the unconscious thing of Die Hard is we just moved away from like physical ailments or like oiled muscles for a few years. And when it's not done very well, you do end where they just look like they work for the civil service or something.
Yeah.
And we've had that all the way through. I mean, I can't speak for next week because I know we've got Jet Li next week, and I can't remember how good, bad, or indifferent he was. But certainly of the first 3 films, there's like one villain and one henchman standing out, isn't there? And it's Joss Ackland and Gary Busey. And both of those wouldn't be out of place in Bond films, would they?
No. Not particularly. But I just think maybe it's the attitude, like maybe they think, oh, well, it's just a villain, it's not that important. The important thing is like the lead and what they're doing kind of things. I think that would probably be like the mindset of Richard Donner and
I do believe that because I think with Superman he was always interested in Superman's journey. His Superman films were about Superman's love for Lois more than they were about anything else, and his own sense of guilt for what he could or couldn't do for humanity.
Which I agree that's probably the most important, but you do have to lean into. You do have to have the villain that that leans up against it. Do you know what I mean? It has
Well, I've only just remembered that the plot of this film is to do with arms. I mean, the first two were about drugs, and it's just generic action films. It's not unlike something you'd have got in Miami Vice or something. And they're superior to... Well, I can't speak for Miami Vice. I haven't seen it for years. Probably hideously dated, but I mean, these are still superior films. I don't want anyone listening to think we're really slaughtering this film. I had a reasonable time with it, but put it up against Lethal Weapon. If you haven't seen Lethal Weapon and you watch this, it's an affable buddy cop film with a really irritating sidekick, but it's all right. But we're falling quite fast here, and in both films I've wondered what the reason for being is, and it's got worse each week, because in the first one there was still sort of Murtaugh having to deal with his kids growing up. You know, the condom advert was a throwaway joke, but it was funny, and it actually did inform character. And Riggs having to sort of like confront what happened to his wife and actually try and fit in with the family, in that he's round there having his laundry done, where you could feel a bit of a spare part there and stuff. But each week it's just becoming like they've just cooked up another adventure here, and they're interesting, but what made them interesting was a mixture of their chemistry, which is still there, and where the two characters were, which is now being stretched, because Riggs has behaved like a man on the verge of retirement for 3 films now.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that the film kind of misses its focus, because really, to me, when you think about the wide scheme of like the film, its main focus should be on Murtaugh. And it's almost like Murtaugh, like, you know, he's a guy who's about to retire, but he's also in conflicts because, you know, it does an interesting where, like, you know, he shoots basically his son's mate. You know, even though it's justified.
Strange
but it's still,
decision
like,
in a film that's this much lighter throughout.
Yeah, and you know, even though it's a fucked up thing to sort of go through. And it's just, and I think I would have liked to see more emphasis, especially when he's like there, like being the one pissed on the boat, and it's Riggs is the one who has to sort of, you know, get him back on track. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, it's like I kind of think, see, that's your film. You know, you should have focused more on that and be kind of like almost like a parallel to the first film, where it's like, you know, Riggs manages to sort of find, you know, salvation. You know, well, it's like, well, this film, it's Murtaugh kind of loses his way a bit, and it's Riggs who has to help him find salvation. Do you know what I mean? It would have been like more coherent vision of it, I think. But
that's what we're missing
like
here. We're missing any vision at all. But again, we're being, as happens now and again, when you start picking over the detail of a film, you're probably a bit harsher than you felt about it. You know, I didn't dislike it.
Yeah.
But what hurts this as well is, you know, we watched the second one last week. In fact, we were late recording last week, so the chances are we watched it fairly close to this one. And then a week before that, we watched the first one. So the first two are very, very fresh to us now. I dare say, if I hadn't watched either Lethal Weapon film for a couple of years, this would feel better. But anyway, shall we discuss this film sequentially?
Yes, so,
I was
first things
worried
first.
I thought this was going to be a really short show, just because I don't think there's much to this film.
Well, I mean, look, let's start with the beginning. Now, we get a very flash title sequence with, you know, flames, seeing flames
And
go,
Sting.
and Sting singing a very dull,
Well, it's
slow,
the
melodic song.
The song is "It's Probably Me." Which
Yeah, I forgot to mention Sting. Oh my gosh! But yeah, it doesn't sound like a typical
Well,
Sting
it
song.
starts
does
with
it?
Sting and ends with Elton John, both.
Yeah, which just made me
co-wrote
think.
by,
That just made me think
Joe
of
Clapton.
like Four Weddings and a Funeral or something. What was the other film he sang a crap song over the end of? Elton John. It was in one series we did.
Oh,
I can't remember now.
I
I'm
remember.
going to look up the series we've done, and it might come back to me.
If you ever did Disney, obviously
it
who
was
pops up in
Rocky
that?
Five. Rocky Five, Measure of a Man.
Oh yeah! Oh my gosh! I totally forgot.
It made me think. It just like this is all way too cozy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
I mean, like,
yeah.
the other ones ended with George Harrison. It was both George Harrison songs.
Right. Well, I've got
Yeah,
nothing
but-
against Elton John, by the way, but there's just something about this era Elton John over this film at this point that's just like, no.
It's very dad rock. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's a bit dad rock style.
Go back to like some of his 70s stuff. There was a period where Elton John was like really interesting, but not in the 90s.
So it's just like you think about like the other ones, like you have like a very sort of cool opening with the first film,
Yeah.
and the second one opens just by dropping you straight into it. So okay, that they're all quite effective openings, and this one you just get like this title sequence, and it doesn't feel exciting.
It doesn't build to anything. You think it's going to because it's just like flame moving along a surface, isn't it? Something like that.
And it just goes like to a 3,
Yeah.
But it's no like, but even like the music itself, it's meant to be. I think they're going for like kind of cool, but really it's just a bit. All right.
Trouble is when you go for cool, it doesn't tend to date particularly well. You need to sort of almost stumble on cool, not consciously go for
I
it.
think they're trying to make the film look hot, but it doesn't. It comes off as neither hot or cool. I kind of thought, my first impression of it, I thought, oh, this is a bit different. But then it kind of, I mean, usually I'm a fan of Sting, like his music is alright. And my auntie's like the biggest Sting fan going. But I was a little bit like, oh, this is a bit generic, And I totally get what you say about it kind of going into the field of like generic buddy cop movie rather than feeling part of the Lethal Weapon like brand, I guess. But yeah, I was a bit like, I felt like they're trying very hard with this introduction. So.
I mean, I don't know. I was sat on my own, so no one could comment on my reaction. But I think, like, at least figuratively, I rolled my eyes at this a bit.
Dave, you should do a reaction video. Watch a film. Watch Octopussy and do your reaction.
I'll tell you what. There's very few things outside of like cancer and stuff that I dislike more than reaction videos. People just going, look at me crying or whooping at watching something.
Look at me laughing. It's just
unboxing videos. People going, look, I've just bought a PlayStation. It's like, well, I know what one looks like. I don't need to see what it looks like in some plastic.
I do tend to watch a lot
those
of
videos do really well.
They do really well. That's the thing. They make money out of it.
Yeah, they're really popular. I do watch a lot of unboxing. It's usually kind of like any sort of DVD or Blu-ray box sets, for example. If they have lots of cool extras and things like that.
Yeah.
Reaction videos, I'm not too keen on. There's a channel called Abroad in Japan about this guy Chris Broad who's in Japan, and he you can Google it. I think it's one of his really popular videos. He did a reaction to a reaction video that somebody made about him, and I think he nails it on the head. That it is just basically capitalising off somebody else, and it's just really pointless. But yeah, I can definitely recommend that video. So it makes for an interesting watch.
What did we come out of this thrilling credit sequence into? I've completely forgotten.
Oh, we go straight to like they arrive at a building with like
Oh yeah.
So they've completely cleared the area. There's no one in the building. We know that going in.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, the bomb squad's on its way. And then Rick decides, oh no, let's go and have a look at it. And well, Murtaugh is wisely saying, no, why? We're not bomb squad. No one in the building. There's literally like nothing to like. What's the point? I don't want to risk my life.
I almost hate to apply logic because this is a knockabout buddy cop film. And, things like him reversing his retirement on the day of his retirement, well, certainly in this country, by then it would be, your pension company have fucking sorted it out 3 months ago, you are going, right? Things like that you just give a pass to because that's just how paperwork works. So what? Then break in a few rules here and there. You go, yeah, okay, it's a film for God's sake. I mean, most cops like dress a bit more formally than this for a start, So okay, but two things here. Firstly, we establish very quickly that they don't know how long the bong's got. Although I must admit I've been watching season 2 of 24 recently, and I might be getting confused with the plot line from that. But I'm sure originally they don't know how long the bong's got, so they could literally walk in there and get blown up. And then in the real world, you're in the realms of their family suing the police for letting them go in there and all the rest of it. And we are in downtown LA, which I imagine is somewhat expensive. And this is a rather sizable building. The cost of this building, in terms of, having to recompense the owner for what they do here, is just beyond ridiculous. And unfortunately, I can turn a blind eye to these things where I can, but where I'm sat watching it going, this is fucking ridiculous. The film's just taken a little bit of a step too far.
Yeah, because Briggs is basically just sort of having a bit of a laugh at the expense of, like, whoever owns that
I
building.
wouldn't have minded if he was threatening to go in, and at the last minute, it's like he's actually just like, shining him on. He doesn't really mean it, and it's like, you'll believe anything, Roger.
The only thing you need to do, which will just make it, which will make it work, would be like, well, bomb squad's away, but they're delayed. Probably not going to make it, but let's just stand back.
We've got no choice. It has to be us. Yeah. If you do that, it's still unrealistic, but at least you buy into needs must.
It's like
the
24. Let's give it a shot then.
Well,
what got to lose?
You think of 24. One of the biggest problems they had morally was that show had our heroes beating confessions out of people, but they always had we're on a ticking clock here. We've got no choice. This is our only game. We've got to. And I just think that's the way you play this. Like, it has to be us. Whereas they play it like Riggs pissing about.
Yeah.
And I think it's meant to be funny, but it just takes me right out of the film.
Yeah. And it's even like when he's there decking about, not taking it seriously. And it's just, I mean, I think right now he's like, this is not Riggs, really.
No, it's parody Riggs because at least when he was suicidal, he was aware of what he'd be given up. When he put a gun in his mouth, he couldn't do it because taking his own life is such a huge thing. And he's crying because he doesn't want to be here, but he can't end it. Now, supposedly in a much better place, he's wandering in where a bomb can go off any second. It's like, I'll just clip that fucking thing. It's a hunch. It's like, in every film trope tells you these things are often booby traps. You click the wrong button, the speed it goes down like doubles. How often have we seen that as a film trope?
And Drax Murtaurin as well.
Yeah, who's 10 days
say
from
like,
retirement?
you stay here, and that won't be long, kind of thing. Yeah.
So anyway, I think this is just for the funny set piece of them running away and screaming while the building goes up behind them. But just what a waste of a load of pyrotechnics on a badly written scene.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are people listening.
It's a money shot, isn't it?
I'm quite happy to sort of give my opinion, and I'm aware that most listeners are smart enough to understand that, like, if they disagree with us, fine. They just, like, we have a different view and they're interested in what our view is. I am aware that there are people who enjoyed this film who are probably, like, shaking their head at this. It's like you couldn't buy into the fun of the scene. But what I'm saying is the fundamental setup of it was immediately drawing me out of the film. It's like these are not our characters anymore. And
I don't want to like trash all over the film. I'm sure there are some people who think this.
Hello, Chris, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
I can't hear Becca. Becca, can you?
Sorry, I have issues with my mic. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Just do that again. I know we're not trying to trash on this film, but just start that bit.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, just say I don't want to trash on the film and all the rest of it. I just say that I didn't have as good a time as I ever had done with the other ones. There's still lots that I like about it. And I don't want to poop all over it, basically, for want of a better word. I didn't like I didn't categorically hate this movie. But I perhaps enjoyed the other two more. As I say, there's still lots that I did like about this film, like the script and the action is bigger and more explosive. But yeah, there are lots of little things really.
Even them throwing in a cat to save, it's like, did you focus group whether the audience is like cats or something?
Everything in this film, so.
Yeah, is it like you've done a focus group where like the average Lethal Weapon fan is a big animal lover or something?
Yeah, well, Richard Donner's kind of he's well known as an animal lover and pro-life and all the rest of it. Yeah. He's an animal campaigner, so he's well known in that regard.
Yeah, Lawrence Shuler Donner does have a cameo in this. I forget where though. Completely forgotten where it is because I didn't recognise it at the time. I saw her in the credits. So I think that's all we got to say on this. They go in, they're arguing over which one to clip. It's meant to be funny interplay. They clip it and then they've got to run. They grab the cat and the thing blows up and it's like the next thing we see they're back on sort of patrol. I'm sorry, they'd never fucking work again, but they're back on patrol.
They've been demoted. They were like in...
And again, real world intervenes in my mind Because again, the arrangements of pension and shit are not for worrying about when you watch a film like this. But when Murtaugh's moaning, with good fucking reason, Riggs is like, oh, you're doing my head in. And it's like, hang on a minute, if that was Britain, at least, you've kept your job, but your pension's just been cut dramatically 1 week from the end. You've just been caused hard cash by a fucking idiot. You know?
Yeah, now his decision to stay on the force makes a lot more sense. He's like, I can't get my fucking pension back.
Yeah. Lethal Weapon 5, he's got an evening job at a fucking newsagent's as well. Yeah, so yeah, they're almost getting up to fight, and then we find Riggs is wearing a girdle. That's funny, isn't it?
Yeah. He's sucking it in. But again, he's getting older. You know, what do you expect? And they harass a jaywalker.
Again, I'm sorry, I'll stop doing this in a minute, but maybe it's mostly the first act of the film, because eventually I start settling into it and just accepting it for what it is. But when they did this, I just thought, what the fuck are they doing? Do you know what I mean? This guy is just being harassed by the police. Bear in mind, the police are fucking armed in that country. You know, and maybe it plays differently now with like police brutality and stuff like that, but there was just something about it. I was like, this is a pair of fucking idiots, but it's mainly Riggs. And I never felt that way about him in the first two films. He was damaged and hurt, but the job was the one thing keeping him going. It wasn't the one thing he went out to just piss about doing.
Yeah. So yeah, they kind of like frighten him. Yeah, pull a gun out in public, and like, no one else bats an eyelid. Maybe that's LA. And then
although my schizophrenic reaction to this film, when he runs off and they start laughing, I laugh along with them. That's the weird thing about this film. This scene just like pisses me off in every single way. But the moment he runs off terrified and they start laughing together, I'm like, yeah, that's Riggs and Mercer. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, they're just fucking with him, kind of thing. But then they stumble on a
like an armed robbery of what, like a security van?
Well, yeah, it's so they're like, they're pretending to be like the pickup money.
Yeah.
That was the gig, but obviously
like when you go to a bank and you've got to pick up a pile of cash to take somewhere safe, then you get like people in sort of full body armor putting it into like an armored van. It's that sort of arrangement, isn't it?
Yeah. And then so Riggs notices like a guy coming out saying, "Oh, hey, you didn't sign for this," and then like the real armed van come along.
Yeah.
And then so there's and it's basically just a big chase scene involving Murtaugh being driven around by
a woman who wants to like wank him off while she's doing it.
Yeah, singing and just
this character. If they made this film this year, she would be played by Leslie Jones.
Yes, probably something like that.
It's that sort of character. 10 years ago, maybe Queen Latifah.
And again, it's just another unnecessary bit. Like, what? Why?
Well, there's nothing about Roger that. I mean, we know he's not a cheat. There's just no way he's going to, right? That character's not been set up that way. But nor has he been set up to be that uncomfortable about women that we wouldn't believe he would just go, excuse me, no, I'm married, right? And that would be the end of it. And it's played for comedy, and she's really big and broad. And I don't mean physically, I mean as a character. She's a really broad character. And I just think, like, we've come a long way in 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, like, she's middle of, like... bear in mind, she's just, like, seeing, like, whoever she's working with just got shot. And now she's, like, chasing, like, these people with another car. And she's there, like, sort of singing.
She's basically singing, enjoying a car chase, wisecracking, and trying to wank off an aging detective moments after she's seen a murder.
Yeah. And not even... and even when he says, "No, I'm married," she's still fucking cool. Like, seriously? Like, fucking hell. Now, if you reverse that, right, if you, let's just say that, like, Murtaugh was a female character.
If this was a female buddy cop comedy and that's a man cracking onto her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that'll play. It's just like
It
really.
would play really super creepy. Whereas
Yeah.
like, it's just a quirk of. I mean, it's partly its era, but I think it's a quirk of chemistry in that like it is creepy in its way that she's being wildly over the top, but we're just not conditioned to find it offensive in the same way. We're just meant to find it a bit over the top.
Yeah, I mean, she's only in like one more scene later on where she's like constantly like harassing him.
Yeah.
But it's just the whole thing.
I mean, the later scene, she might as well have turned up fucking fingering herself. I'm not suggesting that for like any recut of the film, by the way, because like we don't need to see that. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So the scene where one of the guys gets away and they catch the other one. So he's arrested in custody.
The other one is sort of met. Well, there's a guy. We meet this guy on a building site. Turns out it's Stuart Wilson's character, and he's talking to like. Who is this guy? Is he a celebrity or something? Is he a black rapper or something? I can't remember. Isn't he?
No, I think
he's
no,
rich.
he's obviously like a leader of a gang of some sort.
Oh, is
'Cause
he?
he's after like ammunition, isn't he? Because the whole thing is that they're selling. That they're
It's a
selling
building
guns, but
site.
they
So they use building sites as like a front for all this.
Mm.
And basically, the film I thought of when I saw this, but again, it's because it's a film trope. It certainly wasn't invented by this film, A, because it's later, and B, because it's not that fresh. But it made me think of Jack Reacher. When somebody fails at their mission, and then suddenly out of the shadows comes the real villain of the piece, who either kills them or makes them do something gruesome to themselves. In Jack Reacher, he asks him to cut his own fingers off or something.
He bites his own fingers.
Bite his own fingers off, yeah, because he ain't got a knife. Here, he just basically drowns the guy in like concrete, cement, concrete, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then skipping forward slightly, it turns out that guy, the big bad of this film, is an ex-policeman. He still has like his credentials, so he can walk into a station and flash a badge. I don't know how that works in reality. I mean, if you think of this country, if I was a policeman and I wanted to see if Chris had a criminal record, I couldn't just go into the police national computer and like call him up. I have to have a reason for looking, and it leaves a record. So I'm not sure if you can just walk into a station and suddenly interview whoever sat there. But for the sake of the film, he has the credentials, and people recognise him, that he can walk in somewhere, flash the badge. Oh, yeah, you're detective whoever, on through you go. And so later he will get into a police station to kill the other person who failed and drew the police his way.
But yeah, so it turns out these two kind of gone basically rogue, did an independent like heist just to like score some extra money between them, and obviously because they fucked up, he wasn't happy about it, so basically he had him killed. Drowning concrete's pretty brutal though. And yeah, so they've got the suspect. And so we're pretty much within the first day they're like taken off the case. They've been put under.
Well, they're now street cops anyway. Even though I'm still a bit confused because they still walk into the same, sort of captain and report as though they were cops. But this case has been taken over by Internal Affairs by this lady called Lorna, whatever her surname is, and that's Rennie Russo, and it's because they think it's an inside job because of cop access to this, that, and the other. Guns have been taken off the street or confiscated, put in secure places within police stations and so on, and then stolen. But not only stolen, they were boxed up or whatever, and they even knew which boxes to take.
So because at the moment, these at this point in time we don't know this because it's
I am moving on a bit,
yeah, but it's they just say, hang on, why is this internal affairs case? Like what you're talking about? These
internal affairs stating the obvious.
It's like, you don't need to know.
Internal affairs are internal affairs. They investigate cops. So it's not immediately clear. This just looks like a normal sort of organised crime thing. And in the interim, Murtaugh is sort of selling his house. Leo showing people around, complete with his fucking 1996 Paul Gascoigne hairstyle. And Riggs being comedic. Riggs is eating dog biscuits to try and stop him smoking.
Yeah, so I think you can sort of tell whether it's getting a bit more family friendly, or maybe it's just like cinema in general when they want to cut out smoking.
Yeah.
So they kind of think, play, Riggs is eating dog biscuits.
Well, that's the first thing I think of if I thought I can't show smoking. What can I do? Well, everyone eats dog biscuits, obviously. Okay, so they're selling up basically. What else? We do get a bit of foreshadowing. We see Murtaugh's son talking to a friend of his. Mm-hmm. That friend turns out later to be sort of in a gang. And then we go on to the scene we were just talking about where he kills the guy.
Yeah, just walks into the police station. And it's always another thing about films. I mean, this has always been a movie, but you can't just walk in and shoot one. I mean, they always put silencers on. That makes it sound like there's barely any sound.
Silencers don't silence in real life, but I'm quite happy to accept that as a film trope.
Yeah, it's always that goes back to even Bond and probably even before then.
I've seen videos. I mean, I'm not remotely into guns, but I am into films and how films are made. And I have seen films of silenced guns, and they're not that much quieter.
No. I think they're more for your benefit when firing.
I think
it's to stop wear a big thing overhead.
Reduce the possibility of you damaging your hearing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It isn't. Let's put this on a gun so you can kill people without getting caught.
Yeah.
Who knows? God, so many tasteless jokes went through my head then, but I won't because gun violence is not particularly funny. What else? We see his daughter. There's a scene there where she's being supposedly held. The only point I wanted to make about Rihanna is I was looking at some of the cast today, and it's just the funny thing about the ages of the people in this, because Rihanna in the first film is still, we think, a minor, and it's the second film with the condom advert, isn't it? So she's clearly just about an adult there. So you would reasonably expect that Rihanna was born in real time, something like 1970, 1971. The actress was born in 1960. So she was 27 in the first film, whereas her dad was 40 and Mel Gibson was about 31. There's about 4 years between the two of them.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I mean, with the shorter hair in this, and she's a few pounds heavier, she does look a bit older. But
I didn't recognise, to be honest with you.
No, she looks very different. She was a lot sort of... she did play younger in the first ones, and like I say, she had a longer haircut, and she was very slim. Now, she's not fat here, and if she was, so what? But I'm just saying she's physically a slightly different build here as well. And Riggs.
The short hair doesn't help.
It does seem like a great idea. It just seems like a way to get Riggs into scrapes left, right, and centre. Riggs just goes over and gets into a fight with this guy because it turns out he thinks she's being held at gunpoint. Then he's like, "Why is it a rubber gun?" And they're making a film, and you think, is that how film sets work? Is this Bowfinger or something? Is this Bowfinger? If they just sort of gone, let's just quickly do it here. For anyone listening, go and look up the Steve Martin film Bowfinger. It's really funny. They're making a film with the biggest action star in the world, only he doesn't know he's in it. So they'll just walk up to him and say stuff, and they just film whatever his reaction is. You would think these sets would be closed or have security or something, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, or they'll be like announcing, like, right, we're filming, everyone, especially when...
even outdoors, you have like lighting sheets and stuff.
Yeah.
You don't... He just runs straight in. It reminded me of was it The Naked Gun? Where the police commissioner takes into task for shooting like a load of guys in the park.
Yeah.
And it was they were doing a play of Julius Caesar. And he thought he was interrupting a crime, so he killed like 5 people. That's what this is. Yeah. So, think about it. We're likening this film to Loaded Weapon, to like Police Squad. it's fallen a bit. It's quite a funny scene. It's just an opportunity for us to see Rianne. Rianne's working as an actress. She's graduated from condoms to feature length. No. And then what?
And she initially gets fired for an role just for knowing Riggs.
Yeah.
And then Riggs basically sort of
beats the guy up and he rehires her. And it's like, well, what was the fucking point of that? And then, again, Murtaugh, with his 40 years experience, accidentally discharges his firearm.
Yeah.
And that scene earlier where they were talking to the jaywalker, they got out, like, the book to, like, book him or something. And Riggs goes, do you remember how to do these? And I'm thinking, do they do that? Just put cops back on the street with absolutely no idea what they're doing. You know, you imagine them getting the handcuffs out going, how do these work again? It's like, oh, well.
I know. I mean, I must admit, I did kind of like those little things because it kind of makes it a bit more humanising. Like,
Yeah.
oh shit, you know, because he can kind of relate. You know, if you get like pushed back to like a job that you used to do ages ago, and you get a bit.
It does
happen. Shit, how did these work?
It does happen. I remember because I'm a project manager in life, and I'm pretty au fait with like all the software and everything. But I remember a few years ago I'd been doing something else for a few months, and I remember this is like years and years ago. I was a lot less experienced than now, but I remember opening Microsoft Project, ready to write something, and I stared at it for about 5 minutes, and I was suddenly like, oh yeah, I couldn't remember how to use it at all. And then it all came flooding back, so it does happen. But the whole point of this is they're heading to the shooting range.
Yeah, I mean, I did like the bit where the gun went off, but then it's Riggs to start acting like mental afterwards, because as everyone goes rushing in, everyone thinks, oh, it's just Riggs sort of being mental.
Yeah.
To kind of cover for Roger, to like sort of, which I thought was kind of like, oh, that's a kind of nice sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. The whole point is we are about to see them firing the bullets they found on the sort of bad guys. And the whole point is they go straight through. Now, the point is with like a Magnum and all the rest of it, they can be shot, not at point blank range, but a few feet away, no problem. With this, he takes it right the way down to the end of the sort of range, a bit like in the first film, and it goes right through. So, and they just refer to it as cop killers. So that's reasonably sensible storytelling just to get through to us what the stakes are here, but also a clue to find out who did it because they're using custom-made bullets. Yeah,
so this is like sort of this spot thing that they're selling on the streets, which just kind of makes things a bit odd. And also Roger is like a bit shit. You know, not in a vest can fucking save me ass, you know, potentially.
Well, you can see it from Roger's perspective, because as much as it's now been done to the death, you know, he was 3 days from retirement. That has been done to death. But the basic principle of that would make you sit up and take notice. An active case which you're involved with, and this is what the stakes are, and you're like a week away from getting away like safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does make some sense that they've done it.
So where do we go from there?
I think from there we do go to Jack Travis killing the other thing and Rene Russo being introduced. And again, this is another thing where I'm going to be a little bit unfair.
The ice rink, isn't it? We have the ice rink with Pesci because he identifies the
they go to ice hockey because it turns out Pesci knows him and said he was an ice hockey fan. And that's reasonably well done in that the bit with these guys that does work is it doesn't work when you go as far as them cutting wires on bombs, but the idea of them going in somewhere and just will figure something out is very them. Certainly very Riggs, so I quite like this scene. And Riggs doesn't quite catch up with him. He eventually just goes on the tannoy and just shouts his name and just waits to see who moves, really.
Yeah. Kind of like Daniel Craig in
It reminded me exactly of that. It's Daniel Craig in Quantum of Solace, really. You know, the scene at the opera where he just basically, you know, they as soon as he speaks to them, people start moving, and only Mr. White is smart enough to go, well, don't move, because you're just giving yourself away. From there we go on to him being killed, and then they find him dead immediately. Before that, they're talking to the captain, and the captain just basically re-promotes them. And again, this film keeps reminding me of less good films. Because the film I thought of when this happened was Star Trek Into Darkness, where they made a massive noise of demoting Kirk, and within about 7 or 8 minutes of film time, they'd re-promoted him. And it was just like, there was absolutely no point to that. I remember Charlie was on that series when we did it, and one of us, we weren't in sync enough to sort of live message it, but we were talking over Messenger. And he said, funnily enough, I started that about only 10 minutes in. So we were like 10 minutes apart. And he got to Kirk getting his rank back before I got to Kirk losing it. That's how short a time it was. And this whole demotion thing, it was just undone in a few minutes. I don't see the point. The film is just like loosely sticking together these weird little sequences and set pieces. But the point is, they're now on the case with Rene Russo. They know both of those guys are dead. Then we go to Leo telling Murtaugh his house has termites. He's gone in to tell him that, but it's an excuse to get him in the building because that's when they go to the ice hockey. So the ice hockey's after that. And the scene ends with Leo getting shot. And to be fair, to start with, it looks like a pretty serious wound. But it turns out he's been shot in the arm, which, again, in the real world is serious, but in these films it's like a night in hospital, maybe.
It's a flesh wound. Just but a scratch.
Yeah.
They use that excuse to get rid of him.
Yeah. And then what? We must be getting to the Murtaugh shooting his son's friend now.
Yeah, so...
Because we've established there's guns being sold illegally, and they're dangerous. Just
quickly, right? This whole setup, because, Murtaugh, goes to, I'm going to my favourite burger place. You can still go to the best burgers you've ever had. How long have they been working together? I would have thought...
3 or 4 years now, isn't it?
I'd say at least, right?
Yeah.
You'd have thought, Riggs would have, known about this place by now.
Oh, you like burgers, do you? Your first name's Roger? Oh, okay. Yeah, all right.
It's this is this place he goes to regularly enough that the owner lets him go in and makes his own burgers.
Which defeats the fucking object. Oh, it's a brilliant.
This is something you do in the first fucking movie.
It's a brilliant restaurant. I cook great burgers there. It's like that's not how this works. I'd just stay at home if it's me cooking. But anyway. Lots of jokes with Leo in hospital. They put proctology on his treatment options.
Because I'm sure that's how it works.
That's how it works. It's just something handwritten. And when the doctor comes along, to double check it and sign off
It's not like anyone goes, looks at the different handwriting and think, did you write this?
Yeah.
I see the doctor's signature.
This guy comes in, his arm's messed up, and they think, yes, we must stick something up his arse.
Yeah, because surely they'll be like, forever they're going, why are we... I mean, I know this from working in a hospital and things like that. There would be a rhyme or you would question the need for it, So some things makes obvious sense, X-ray. I want to make sure everything's intact.
If you went in and there was a 40-year-old man there with COVID and he was there and he was in hospital because he needed ventilation. If you read on the chart he needed an emergency boob job, you wouldn't just do it without asking, would you?
I mean, that has implication of itself. I mean, would you really want to perform seizure on someone who's on a ventilation unit? But yeah, I mean, it's well, why do we need an invasive procedure like that? What's that going to tell us?
And I think you might think from the outside listening to this that we're picking on things just for the logic and stuff like that when these films have always had a bit of a loose relationship. I think it's actually more of a meta commentary on the film as a whole. That it's not.
I'm just picking on it because I found it amusing.
But it's just not grabbing us to the same degree. We're watching things going, yeah, that's a bit silly, isn't it? Whereas in the first one, we were kind of with it all. The stakes all just felt higher, and I think that's what jars with what's coming. Murtaugh defending himself kills this guy. It turns out to be his teenage son's friend. So this friend is 15, 16, 17, somewhere in that range probably. Yeah. Might be a bit older, unlikely to be any younger. And he goes into this horrible funk, desperately tries to save him. Next time we see Murtaugh, he's on his boat, drunk off his face, and really quite violently.
Yeah, because he doesn't go home. He can't.
Well, I think it's just at odds with the tone of the film. I'd have bought this in the first film.
And this, but things that this is like, again, as I said at the top of the show, this should be like about Murtaugh, and the film kind of uses like him shooting that kid as an excuse to sort of like get Murtaugh out the way for like 10-15 minutes while Riggs and
link it back to Riggs's motivations, i.e. you effectively
Yes,
gave me a family, you saved me, you should stay around for me. Well, yeah, okay, it's an early retirement, so it's not quite as bad. But the idea of trying to guilt somebody into staying into an incredibly dangerous job for you doesn't actually play that well to me.
No, but it's just an excuse to sideline, like get Murtaugh out of the picture just for a brief amount of time, so Riggs and Cole can
go and do stuff, and we can see her kicking ass.
Yeah.
Which she does very well, by the way. I think I spotted a stunt double once. The rest of the time, it looked pretty convincing. There's one shot where I can see it's not her face, but that's it. But that's part of the gig, you know. You didn't really have CG to do anything then.
Yeah, so they beat up some guys. One of them is he's what's his name?
Philip Glenister.
What?
The guy who played Gene Hunt in Life on Mars, his brother, who
It's
was
not him, is it?
his brother, who was in New Tricks with Dennis Waterman, is one of them. He was also in an episode of the episode was called Mother Nature's Son. He was in an episode of Only Fools and Horses as the guy who ran that health food shop when Dell started bottling his own water. You've got two Glenisters, and I can't remember their first names. One's Philip, and the other one is... Let me have a look.
Somebody else.
The one that played... Hang on, Philip Glenister is... I'm going to have a look. Philip Glenister is the one that played Gene Hunt.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that was him. His brother is Robert Glenister, and Robert Glenister's one of the heavies here.
Fun fact.
I was actually there was Nick Chinland, who he's been in a few action movies. He's probably better known as one of the ones in Con Air.
Fun fact.
The one that Nicolas Cage kills with a now put the boner back in the box.
That guy.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That's like one of his first
he just stood out of the mark because I just thought that's the guy from New Tricks, which I've never actually watched, but I've seen photos.
Didn't spot that.
He sticks out from other things for me, but that's probably the thing he's probably best known for. What else do we want to say? I mean, there's a growing something between Lorna and Martin because they're talking about. He's talking about, we're supposed to be on the same side here. You're hiding stuff from me, etc. And they do start talking to the point that, like, they think it's a cop. Right. Why? Okay, so it could be an ex-cop. And it turns out there's been cameras placed by Internal Affairs in the interview rooms for years. So the bad guy was smart enough to cover his face when he went through the sort of desk sergeant part of the area, but he didn't know that it was in the room. So we got a photo of his face, and we know who he is.
Which is kind of, I think she kind of already knows, but she's just looking for evidence.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the investigation done then. Oh, we've got proof of him actually killing someone.
So we got proof of that. We're straight back to, like, him and her showing each other their scars. Which is, I don't know about you, Chris.
Bit Jawsy.
But mind you, that I didn't think they were going to make love in Jaws when they did that. Did you? Did you ever think, we're going to need a bigger boat for all our orgies? I don't know about you. That's how I get women into bed.
He means his cock.
I just go, see that on my arm there? I caught that on my dad's sunglasses when I was 7. Get your knickers off. It's just a free tip for all you lovers out
there. I just kept thinking of how Loaded Weapon takes the mick out of it. Because at one point, I think it's Emilio Estevez just sort of opens up his his whole abdomen. It's like he's got a hamster wheel, just like. Have you seen that yet, by the way, Dave?
No, still not. Mind you, I think we were only talking about it a couple of weeks ago. I haven't got to it yet, and I won't get to it for a while now because I've got well, I think I don't know if I said it on air or off air, but I'm going to hopefully be doing a review of the Zack Snyder Justice League, which I won't editorialise on because I need to watch it with an open mind. But I've got a few other things to watch and review and so on, so I may not get to it for a while, but I will watch Loaded Weapon. Certainly, I'll try to watch it in the next few weeks. Like I say, I think I said last week why I ended up not watching it. It was at the point when all those parodies started like producing diminishing returns, as did National Lampoon. When National Lampoon started doing films, they were funny, and then they started getting really patchy. But like a few people have told me lately, Loaded Weapons are quite funny in places. So what now? They know who they've got to go and get, haven't they? So
Yeah.
This must be the bit with the Rottweiler. Again, they
Yes.
they focus group this. They must have done. Basically, Riggs, falls in love with the dog. Not sexually. But as far as we know. So he talks the dog down.
Yeah,
basically.
but the thing is, you don't even see his other dog. I mean, what happened to...
Perhaps he's a love 'em and leave 'em type with dogs.
Maybe.
Perhaps the other dog had got boring in bed, Chris.
Maybe.
Or he likes it a bit dangerous. He thinks, next time I'm bedding a Rottweiler.
Threesome.
Yeah. Although he'd have to have some impressive scars to impress those two.
Doggy style, of course.
Doggy style, yeah.
So Riggs goes back to Murtaugh to kind of,
By the way, why do dogs get all the credit for doggy style? Because isn't that the way most animals do it?
I don't know.
I mean, aren't there apes somewhere going like they stole our idea? Mind you, I don't know how many books of doggy style dog porn apes are reading, to be fair.
I don't know. I guess it's just like it's probably just caught on.
Well, you just think dogs were so cool, everyone else copied them.
I don't know. I mean,
Must have been one of the coolest.
It's pretty cool.
Do
Don't
we
diss it.
think
It's all
it
good.
started with red setters or some elegant dog? I mean, if it started off with basset hounds doing it, I don't think it had taken on.
But you got Rottweilers instead. So.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, they could do whatever they wanted to me. They're quite
Well,
serious.
exactly.
It's like, oh,
Exactly.
go on, just be quick.
Let them carry on.
If you've romanced a Rottweilers, write to us at expectustotalk@gmail.com.
We're not going to get any emails.
So I'm literally struggling with where the film goes now. What happens next?
Hopefully, because
yes.
there isn't much to this film, we can try and whip through it quickly.
Yeah, no,
I
we're
hope.
not going to be long now because it's just
Okay,
action, finished.
so you've got Murtaugh who's like drinking himself to death. They,
Yeah, he really goes downhill, doesn't he? I just feel like,
Riggs talks him out of it. So he joins Cole and.
But it's dealt with in a scene. It's another thing that adds to this idea of they're chucking everything. Not only does it feel tonally odd with this film, but the film doesn't really commit to it either.
Mm.
So it's just like, well, you needn't bother with that.
Yeah, so you have a scene where Cole is beating up guys again, while Riggs is just like, oh, look at that, and she's great. Why one of them actually looks like John Landis in a leather jacket.
Yes, he does.
Oh yeah, he does a little bit. I thought the same.
He does. Fuck you! Great actor.
Give him a slap.
So yeah, they managed to get away. They grab a truck full of weapons, but one of them falls out, kind of thing, and they get away with the dog, of course. And yeah, so I think they're back at the police station, and obviously the bad guy takes the captain.
Yeah.
Because he needs to retrieve basically like the guns back from the evidence.
They haven't really done enough with this captain for us to feel anything here. You do forget him between films, but yeah, they take the captain who he plays the scenes okay, and he has the appropriate reactions. I mean, like a beat cop gets shot as he's kidnapped, and he really is quite rage with it about it.
Like,
that's needed
you
to happen.
son of a bitch.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
And so they figure out like what they might be doing next. Riggs, Cole, and that. So they go down to like the I won't say it's evidence, but it's connected to a track, isn't it? So you get a whole sequence. You have a young rookie cop who's like was in the scene before with the gun range, which might as well have dead tattooed on his forehead.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm 22.
It's my birthday.
Good for you.
Dead.
Yeah. I'm
dies on
22.
his
I'm
birthday, it's
22,
so
a
sad.
virgin, and I'm 3 days from retirement. That would have just completely.
Yeah, that's it.
And I'm topless in several
21
scenes, and I run upstairs just after anything happens. Yeah.
I've just proposed to my girlfriend. I can't wait to go
I
home.
can't wait to get home to Doris.
Can't wait to get home, exactly.
Play cricket for Croydon Gentlemen. I think I'm just quoting Blackadder then. Yeah.
Yeah, dead.
Dead. Yeah. Oh well.
So yeah, so you have a shootout there. Riggs goes on pursuit. There's a chase out, and then you have the bit where they get away, and basically you just get to the end film where Leo turns up and tells them what property he owns. I don't know why I couldn't tell them that before, but
I think it's more the fact they hardly, apart from Riggs sitting with Lorna and her telling him the whole story of someone knew exactly what was in stations and could get in and knew what the stock numbers were and got it out, which is obviously saying it needs to be a cop or an ex-cop, and him going, oh, so that is a cop or an ex-cop. Once again, they do literally no detective work.
Well, yeah, but what do you expect, Dave?
They don't work anything out at all.
I mean, one of the things is like, right, so you got right at the beginning, you got the guy shooting someone in police custody. You got video evidence. Why is not like why is not a team looking for this guy? Like a warrant? Like, okay, this guy.
Why don't you ring the fucking pension company? Where's it live?
Well, exactly.
I mean, this guy must be like hiding, like must be like having like his name off all the books of type of thing, because surely.
I mean, I'm joking. I'm sure he's hiding and everything else, but once again, the plot is broken by Joe Pesci walking in and saying, "Go there," and it's like, this is quite disjointed, and they've done nothing to prove they're even halfway competent policemen at this stage. What they are is quite good pistol marksmen and pretty good at like fighting.
Yeah, so basically, sort of like he tells them like, right, there's a housing development under construction owned by Travis.
Yeah.
Which you think, well, thanks. You could have told us that before. We could have you had whole police escort and got him there.
Yeah, exactly.
Arrested him.
Yeah.
Put a warrant out, all that. But so
I think they should make. Detective films with just me and you doing really routine paperwork and deductive reasoning.
Well, yes, that does sound
I'd
rather
watch that.
boring.
I think it would work.
I'll buy that for $1.
I think that would work.
Wrong series, but you know what I mean.
The problem is I've got no detective skills at all. So
Well, yeah, but
you could be like a medical detective.
Compared to what?
oh, so basically house.
What? So in other words, you
Basically.
walk in and go, "Yeah, that arm's definitely broken."
A house, he's a lot more lovelier and has a better bedside manner.
Let's
Okay,
celebrate
yeah,
the beers on our boat. So yeah.
Yeah, so basically have a big action scene, which I think actually look visually nice with like the wooded
It's
wooded
shot
construction
quite
sites
nicely.
burning up.
It's nicely shot and designed. I've just reading up on Tracy Wolf here. The one who plays his daughter. It's December 27th, 1960. She was born, and it says here Wolf has largely withdrawn into her private life, but is still active as a model. What's she fucking modelling? Spark plugs?
Depends what kind of modelling you're into,
Yeah, all right. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
Anyway, let's wind it up.
What else have we got to say about this plot?
Not much. Cole gets shot, but is wearing 2 vests,
Yeah.
but still needs medical attention.
Do
And,
you think she was just like, it's like a padded bra to her? She was like, my tits are looking unimpressive. I'll wear 2 of these.
Obviously all the bad guys get shot. And yeah, so it kind of ends with, Murtaugh like not retiring. Riggs sort of teasing about like relationship with his daughter, but it isn't really. So I'm spoken for now, and yeah, and then there's
To
an
be
end credit
honest,
scene.
he spots them
It's
having a little kiss outside, and even knowing that they're supposed to play a sexual tension there, and Riggs is meant to be like, catnip to the ladies. I still saw that. It just looks like a kiss between family friends. It's like your uncle giving you a kiss. That's what it looked like. So, okay, fair enough.
And then there's an end credit scene where
Plus, he's got Rene Russo. Why would you want anyone else?
Yeah, he just sort of spent like the past like days seeing him like ogling her the whole time.
Yeah. I've just had sex with the former model for like, whatever it was, Guess Jeans or Tommy Hilfiger or whatever it was she used to model for. Yes, of course I like your homely daughter, who advertises Johnny's. Alright, so that's it. And we're not friends, we're family. That's next week. Okay. Final thoughts, Chris.
It's okay. I mean, it's declining quality. It's made by committee, as I said before. I think it's just like an issue of too many cooks, too many different ideas without really real focus, and really it was just an excuse to sort of get together and like and enjoy the process. I think for everyone involved, and I think that's the real problem. It is largely forgettable, but it isn't bad. You kind of enjoy it while it's on, but you are reminded like of how much it has declined since. I mean, not even from the first one, even from the second film, it's gone down. So
it's a bigger drop than last week's drop, if you like. I would hold, and I respect Becca's difference of opinion on it. I would still hold the first one's better than the second one, but the drop is hardly anything. I felt a bit more tonal imbalance last week, but it was still similar sort of quality. This is a drop. This is the family friendly, slightly parody version of the same thing.
Becca?
Yeah. Oh no, I don't know. First, I don't really know where to begin, really. Yeah, this series obviously is completely new to me. I'm aware of the legacy that it leaves on action cinema, and a lot of the tropes that we're so familiar with today actually kind of began with this series. And love him or hate him, Shane Black did create some really iconic characters. And whatever you might think of Mel Gibson, he has created an iconic character here, definitely for sure. As I say, I'm not saying I hated the first film, whatever. It is a classic. I just think I kind of maybe enjoyed the second film more, just for the action, for example. But I still very much enjoyed the first one, and it's one of my favourites. So yeah, don't get me wrong, for sure. But yeah, I would agree with you guys on this film. It's just a bit of a step down, really. I mean, it's funnier. There's more action. They tried to cram a lot. Where it kind of falls down for me is where they try to cram a lot in. That there is more action, but there's also more action. They try to cram in more action set pieces than is necessary, really. Don't really need Joe Pesci, although he is funny. But then the script is kind of a bit zingier, and so he's almost a little bit of an afterthought. The villains aren't really scary. You don't really kind of get to know them, really. And just because they might look more ordinary and everyday, and because they are essentially cops, maybe that kind of makes them more scary. I don't know.
Not that Joss Ackland it doesn't. Joss Ackland is still the fucking unsettling one.
Oh, well, he's terrifying, definitely. But he's brilliant in whatever he does. Whichever role he is, you do feel that you kind of know him, and you just think, it's horrible. But yeah, here don't really get that so much, unfortunately. Although Stuart Wilson does give a really good performance. It's that the rest of them really kind of let him down, unfortunately. So yeah, this is a bit of a drop off in quality for me. It does kind of feel like, as you said, Dave, more sort of generic buddy cop movie rather than like a Lethal Weapon film, for example. But yeah, 2 out of 5.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just have this idea that if I went to the cinema to see this, having never seen it before, when a film hasn't settled in your mind, I think by definition I'd probably end up coming out and giving it a 3, just because I wouldn't really have, I won't have settled on anything. Nothing's really offended me about it. Nothing stood out, and I always think conceptually films sort of start as a 3, and they either kind of impress you or disappoint you from there. It is a big step down, but I think the best way to mark this film would be to give us 4 fun facts, 2 of which are ludicrous and don't fit with the rest of the facts, and 1 miserably grim dark fact, just to reflect the shifting tone of this film, Becca.
Oh, sorry. Well, you never know. Yeah, but it's some random fun facts, really. So fun fact number 1. Carrie Fisher was apparently an uncredited script doctor on this film, which I think is quite interesting. And these other facts are more to do with like the casts and things like that, and then a random fun fact at the end. So number 2, other actors considered for the role of Jack Travis include Jack Nicholson, Gene Hackman, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino. Imagine how good that would have been. Alec Baldwin, Eric Berman, Michael Keaton, and John Travolta. Other actresses considered for the role of Lorna include Jodie Foster, Michelle Pfeiffer, Linda Hamilton, Laura Dern, Gina Davis, and Kirstie Alley. My fun fact about Bram Stoker's Dracula: Winona Ryder was also the director's first choice for the role, but Joel Silver thought she was too young, and plus also she was busy filming Bram Stoker's Dracula at the time. Fun fact number 4, this is the only Lethal Weapon film where Murtaugh's house isn't damaged in any way, and likewise his family emerged from the film relatively unscathed and unthreatened, so it's quite funny that it doesn't happen in this film. Fun fact number 5, the 3 Stages game that we see at Lorna's house is actually a real thing. I didn't realise. It was released in 1987 by Amiga, and was ported for all the amazing retro consoles like Commodore 64, Game Boy Advance, Windows, Mac, all that kind of thing, all the retro consoles. And the game actually earned largely positive reviews. It's favoured for its humour, but it obviously had limited replay value. So yeah, that's my 5 randomly fun facts.
As for social media, you can find me at ThePasterKid1976 on Twitter.
You can find me at Cinematographer. You can also find all the old episodes at cinematographer.co.uk. You
can find us on Twitter at Expect Us to Talk. You can find us on all the major platforms: Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to find us. Don't forget to rate, review, like, and share. It helps us to kind of rank higher and attract more listeners. So yeah, wherever you like to find us on your platform, do get in touch.
And Chris might put us on Amazon Music if we can get round to it.
One day soon, fingers crossed.
Yeah. I'm glad we're on Spotify, because that's become...
Oh, is that a thing?
Yeah, Amazon Music.
No, I did.
Podcast.
Oh, God, how many more podcasts...
we can't keep asking you for more, but Amazon... We ought to go on
Spotify,
Amazon.
Stitcher, Podbean, Podbay.
Yeah.
Maybe Amazon Podcasts.
Yeah. Anyway,
okay, well, I'll find out how to do it.
Yeah.
I think we're on enough places, though.
No, I think after that we will be. So we need to be on Spotify now, because people have sort of moved away from Apple quite significantly, but we're on there, so it doesn't matter. I'll be very interested with next week to find out whether... Because I said at some points this film felt almost like it was made 10 years after the other two. I'll be interested to know what it feels like when we get to a film that is like 6 years later. And
it is actually 6 years later.
And it is like a decade after the first one. And because like the mullet's
it's almost
gone,
like distance between new Bond films
well,
now.
it's just because,
there's
distance,
like
I might be more forgiving of the lighter tone, because with this one, they're in the sort of all the accoutrements of the first film, but it feels like a reprise, whereas maybe next time I'll accept that. I don't know. But that's for next week, which means Becca.
Oh, before we go though,
sorry,
I think we'll have to say an RIP to Yakati. I can't pronounce his name. I'm sorry.
From Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
The point about Yaphet Kotto is I was friends with him on Facebook, but I just assumed it wasn't the real account. Then his wife not only posted the news on like his fan page, but she posted it to that page as well. So it turns out I was Facebook friends with Yaphet Kotto and just assumed it was like a parody for fucking years.
Yeah, I wondered the same as well. I thought, is that really him?
No,
or is
it's really him.
Could have invited him on the show.
His wife posted to that. Claims he died at 81, but Yaphet on his Facebook page, his personal one, which it turns out we were friends with without knowing, or we were only sort of 30% sure it was him, if you like.
Yeah, I didn't know it was him.
I thought on balance it might be, but he kept claiming he was younger than 81. He said the press continually get his age wrong.
It's like Timothy Dalton, he's two ages at once.
Well, that's the thing that made me think it wasn't accurate, because he said he was still in his early 70s, but if you look at when he was active, that's not actually possible. So
No.
I wasn't sure it was real, but then his wife posted the news not to his fan page and to there. So she posted it to his personal page as well, which we happened to be.
It wasn't
friends
us.
with.
It wasn't us.
It wasn't us. We didn't care. We haven't mentioned him for a long time.
No.
So there you go. Anyway.
Oh, very sad news.
So on that happy note, Becca.
On that happy note, yes, we will return when the Expected Talk returns with our review of Lethal Weapon 4.